Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us tonight on episode 14, season 2 of the Standoff with Brad and Richie. We're here live every Wednesday on Facebook throughout the season. Thought it was a pretty entertaining round, Richie, but man, what a heartbreaking performance from the Warriors.
It was. Doesn't matter how entertaining the round is for me, when the Warriors lose like that, it kind of spoils it for me.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks when it's on a Friday because it kind of sets up the rest of the weekend to kind of foul a little bit. But while we're here live on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m, you can also catch our show via our podcast on iHeartRadio at your convenience. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. As always, we're going to be covering everything you need to know in the week that was rugby league, including our top stories of the week, a review of the round 12 matches and our picks. We'll then stop and answer some questions from you guys and some questions we have for each other. Then we'll go into a preview of the round 13 clashes and make our picks before covering the Super League and ending the show. So tune in to get your rugby league news, and remember to send us questions and comments throughout the show. And let's just get into the top stories of the week, Richie.
Okay.
The first one I had, it's probably not the biggest story of the week, but Jake Clifford and Tommy Dearden have both officially made mid-season switches. Clifford's now with the Knights, and Dearden has gone to the Cowboys. So Clifford was quite emotional after the game against the Warriors, and it's clear to see he knew his bags were packed. So what do you think about the switch? Obviously, the Knights need help in the halves. And yeah, Dearden's quite a handy pickup for the Cowboys.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, the Knights definitely need some help in the halves, so Clifford will bring some reinforcement there. Thought he's been going not too bad when he's been playing for the Cowboys, so be interesting to see how it changes the dynamics of both sides.
Yeah, 100%. And feel like it's the Broncos have let a player go, but they've never haven't got anything in return, so they're kind of like the losers in this scenario of this little love triangle. But definitely be good to see what happens with both players. I think Dearden was kind of on the outer once he signed, so he wasn't being used. I think he would be quite handy. But on to the next bit of news. The Tigers have actually signed an English centre, Oliver Gildard. I think I've got his name wrong. He's signed on a 2-year deal. Plays for Wigan. He scored 61 tries in 129 games for Wigan. He was actually a centre rumoured to be looked at by the Warriors before they signed Ewan Aiken. I've seen a little bit of his work in the Super League, being a Wigan fan, and I think he's a handy player and he could do well in the NRL. Would I go the Tigers if I was him? I'm not too sure. But with the Warriors pulling out of the race, they might have been the only option. I know you don't watch a lot of Super League, but do you know anything about Oliver?
From what I've seen of him, he looks like he'd be a decent enough acquisition. Be interesting to see where he sort of fits in with the Tigers' plans, because I think we've seen Tommy Talau playing a bit this year, and he's looked not too bad. And also BJ Leilua there. I know he wasn't playing on the weekend, but interesting to see where he fits into their makeup.
Yeah, you also got Adam Dewey as well, who he's all over the place where he's playing, but I don't know if that's an indication that next year they want to make Dewey a permanent 5'8", which is probably where he plays better for them anyway. But yeah, interesting times for the Tigers. We're going to talk about their game coming up, but I think they're showing a lot of heart this year. They're just missing something, and maybe he is something that will help. Next bit of news, we may as well get into some state of origin. I'm sure we'll be on different sides of the fence here, but the origin teams have been announced, and game 1 has been moved to Townsville due to the current COVID lockdown in Melbourne. There's been a bit of an uproar that Queensland get 2 games in Queensland this season. As a New South Welshman, I'm going to ask you the question, what do you take on Queensland having 2 home games this year?
I don't think it'll be too much of a negative for New South Wales up there in Townsville. They should have a nice sort of dry, fast track, so I think looking at New South Wales backline and sort of mobile forward pack they've picked, it might actually suit them a little bit with their game style. Obviously, the crowd will be on the other side of the fence, though. So, yeah.
They've had it. I think the last time a team had 2 home games, it was Queensland as well, which has kind of been thrown a bit. But I think at this level, with the talent that you've got, it doesn't really matter where they're playing. And I think everyone would prefer a crowd as opposed to still staying in Melbourne with no one there. If it could have been moved elsewhere, I see Paul said, should the game have been moved to Auckland? Apparently, there were talks that they were going to take it to that abomination we call Eden Park. I don't know if they could have done it just due to the time difference. It would have been like a 10 o'clock kickoff in Auckland. But there were other places they could take it. They could have even looked at just jiggling it around and moving game 1 to Suncorp, and then game 2 move it to Melbourne if everything's cleared up or something. There was other options, but to their credit, it wasn't something that they could plan straight away. It was kind of we've got to make a decision now. And I think Townsville, they'll get a great turnout. So yeah, it's always interesting to watch. And as a Kiwi over here, it doesn't really matter where it played, to be honest, as long as we get to watch it.
Nice new stadium in Townsville as well.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of Origin, the first game is actually going to be broadcast live on TV3. It's the first time in 19 years that they're going to get some live rugby league on their channel. Deal was struck between TV3 and Sky for the first game, but then the second 2 will be exclusive on Sky. It doesn't really affect me as someone who has Sky Sport because I like watching league, but I think it's a great way to maybe try to get some more eyes on the game. What do you think?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, mate. Like yourself, it won't affect me too much. I would have watched it anyway. But it's great that some people that don't have a Sky account will be able to tune in and have a look.
So, guys, this is in response to how Spark Sport were putting the first Test match or the first one-day international on free-to-air and then putting the rest of the series on behind a paywall. I think that's part of the, again, sort of get some eyeballs on the first one. Hey, if you want to watch the next 2, sign up.
Yeah,
definitely. I think it's something like that. I think the only problem they'll have is that if you are a league fan, you already have Sky because it's the only way you can watch it. But yeah, for the others that aren't and are interested, that it could be opening the door for them and letting them come in and then decide to spend thousands of dollars to have a Sky in their house. But yeah, it's good to see something like that. It's always good to have something free to air occasionally.
No, but you could sign up, say, to Sky Sports now for a month for like $20 or $29, whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to go with the whole dish and all the entertainment channels like you used to. There are other options for those who are tech savvy of us, unlike Richie, who loses his camera every so often.
Touch wood, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, there are those other options which do help. Yeah. So we may as well. I've got some more State of Origin news, so we may as well hit it now. Kalen Ponga has been ruled out of Origin Game 1, and Reed Mooney, who I talked about putting in my team in your question last week, he was picked, but now he's been released back to the Eels because they say Harry Grant's looking healthy. So a bit of a heartbreaker for him. He gets the call up, and then he gets told, "Get on your bike, son. You're going home."
Yeah, it is a bit harsh, eh? So what's the reshuffle looking like, Brad? I didn't actually catch that today.
They haven't really 100% confirmed, but it sounds like Valentine Holmes might be moving to fullback.
With Kyle Felt on the wing?
Kyle Felt on the wing, yeah. So it makes sense. Kyle Felt's an out-and-out winger. Valentine Holmes, he, in the game we're going to talk about soon, has been playing really well and is a good fullback. So, yeah, as a Queensland fan, I'm not too concerned. It should be easy. We got the worst team ever, probably again, and we'll probably win it again. So,
I disagree with you there.
Yeah.
Respectfully, I disagree.
Yeah, and I see Scott's mentioned AJ Brimson for fullback. That could be an option too. He's been playing outstanding. I had him as my fullback in your question to me last week, so I didn't even have Valentine Holmes in there. So yeah, I think AJ's been playing really well as well. So it's really just going to come down to what Paul Green wants to do. You got any thoughts on who you would prefer, AJ or Valentine?
AJ Brimson was sort of touted for the utility bench role, wasn't he? So I guess if he were to start fullback, maybe that brings Reed Marnie from the Eels back into the picture.
Possibly, yeah. So that might be it. They might be deciding to stick with Brimson in that 14 jersey and let Valentine stay out the back. So next bit of the news, our new segment due to the rules, our sin bin count for the round. So it actually came down this week. There were only 12. So still quite a lot. But there were a few games that had none at all, which was good. The Eels game kind of blew it out. There were 4 in that game. But yeah, it kind of looks like the teams are kind of coming back and bringing it down. The Warriors had a sin bin in their game, but it wasn't for a contact to the head, so that's a bonus. Yeah, what do you think? Do you think the teams are adjusting, or was it just the refs are being a bit more lenient?
Probably a little bit of adjustment, mate. But yeah, there were a couple of silly sin bins, in my opinion, too, from the round. I'm sure we'll touch on them during the game reviews. But yeah, from that standpoint, I don't think the refs went any lighter. So maybe it is a bit of an adjustment. If anything, I saw some really curly ones from the refs. But again, we'll touch on them during the review.
Yeah, exactly. There's a certain former Warrior lone player that I think was lucky with how the new rules are to get away with a couple, but we'll discuss that in his game. But next bit of news, it kind of changed in the last 24 hours, but Nico Hines has signed with the Sharks on a 3-year deal worth $1.8 million. He was still clubs with news coming out yesterday that the Warriors had thrown a 3-year deal worth 1.5 at him with the option to play 5'8". But yeah, as soon as that news came out, a couple of minutes later, he came out saying he'd signed with the Sharks. What do you think about it? His stock's been rising the last couple of weeks with Brian Pappenhausen out. Do you think it's a good move that he goes to Cronulla, or would you like to see him go elsewhere, taking away being a Warriors fan out of the equation?
It's a good move for Cronulla. Yeah, he's obviously a very talented player, and in the last few weeks, he's really had the opportunity to show his wares. Interesting to see where he fits into the Sharks setup, because I know they've re-signed Will Kennedy. Yeah, don't know what that means for maybe somebody like Matt Moylan, but yeah, interesting to see whether he slots into the halves or if they look at him as a fullback. I'm guessing maybe in the halves if they've re-signed Will Kennedy. What do you reckon?
I think I think they're going to be looking at him as a halves option and trying to keep either Johnson or Moylan, depending on if Johnson wants to stay or not. I think he might now, because I think the Broncos were really the only club that were really after him, and they've got Adam Reynolds now. So I don't think there's as much desire from other clubs to take Sean Johnson, but that could change depending on how his form goes in the back end of the season. But yeah, I see 2 out of the 3 are going to be there. It just depends which one they decide to stick with, if it's Moylan or Johnson.
I think Johnson would have to take a bit of a pay cut from what he's used to stay, I think,
I think, to be honest, I think you have to take a pay cut wherever he ends up. I don't see him being that $1 million player that he once thought he was. So yeah, interesting times there, and it's obviously something we're going to have to keep an eye on so we can advise all of you a bit more once we know more. Next little bit is kind of a couple, but Phil Gould made his first trip to New Zealand as an employee. He got to speak to a lot of the club in person. He's done a lot of his job via Zoom due to the current climate, and he actually went and visited a few club matches in Auckland. Sky Sport put on their YouTube channel a 45-minute interview with him and Gould Paladin. That was actually a really good watch. I watched it again today, where he kind of gave his insights on the whole Warriors staying in Australia situation, how to develop talent, not only for the Warriors, but as an NRL club in general. He gave his opinion on Nathan Brown as a coach. And I thought it was a really good insight for him. So I recommend you guys checking it out. It's quite big, so you can't condense everything he said in there, but he was quite confident and said he doesn't want to put a date down on when the Warriors might benefit from developing their development. But there was some insightful stuff there. He had a lot of kind words to say about Nathan Brown and said that he thinks that the Warriors will benefit a lot from having him as coach. And the key is you've got to stick. You can't have a year and a half and then you sack a coach, get another one. You've got to give them some time to breathe. And he also had a lot of kind words about how hard it is for them being in Australia, and that the decision to stay in Australia hasn't been taken lightly. And he said that there was a lot of people aren't giving them the credit for where they are performance-wise with all the struggles they're going through. So, yeah, it's good to see. And hopefully he gets to come over a bit more in the upcoming months, as long as the COVID situation kind of stays steady. Thankfully, he doesn't live in Melbourne. But yeah, before we move on from that, there was some more news where the Bulldogs tried poaching Gould. They offered him the general manager job, similar to what he had at Penrith. They wanted him to come, but he said on Twitter that he spoke to the CEO and declined the kind offer, and said that he's committed to the Warriors and the vision that they share together, which is actually good to see, because you'd think general manager of a club's probably going to give you a bit more coin than what he's doing for the club. So what do you think about that he turned it down to stay with the Warriors?
Yeah, I saw on Twitter that he got that offer and shot it down in favour of staying with us. Very happy with that. I think we're seeing with the Panthers, having someone like him on board, I think it's more of a long-term sort of strategy to bear fruit. And he's all about development and developing a club and a culture. So, yeah, very happy that he's come out and said he's going to stay on with us.
Yeah, 100%. And he said in that interview as well, he said a lot about he wants kids growing up here to want to be Warriors, because the amount of kids, you go and look at every NRL club, the amount of kids that were born in New Zealand, a lot of them in Auckland as well, that leave New Zealand as 13, 14-year-olds to go and become NRL players at other clubs. If they could stem some of that flow and get them to want to be Warriors and stay in New Zealand, it will make the club a lot stronger in years to come. You look at Panthers, they're still like the most inexperienced side in the NRL due to how young they all are, and they're the best team in the comp by a country mile, it's fair to say. So that's not something that you're going to see from the Warriors like next year or the year after, because it takes a lot of effort to get that development working. But I think once you see that happen and see those young kids start to flow in and get that experience, it's going to be very fruitful, which is exciting to see. And last bit of news, we haven't talked about him yet, and it feels weird, so we'll go into some Reese Walsh speak. But he's been banned for a week for a striking charge in the game we're about to discuss shortly, which means, unfortunately, due to the Warriors having a bye this week, we're going to miss him for the Storm game in round 14. So a massive loss. I don't think there was much in the striking charge, but it's the new world we're in. What do you think about the suspension and how the Warriors will fare without him?
There wasn't a lot in it, and in my opinion, maybe I'm just old school like you, Brad. We're just a couple of old nuts, but didn't look like much, but probably the fact that he lashed out didn't work in his favour. You look at a couple of the other people that got off this week, Cam Murray, yeah,
Kafusi.
Maybe Walsh just needed to be selected for Queensland and he would have got off.
Yeah, possibly. There were rumours that he was still in the mix too, but I know Nathan Brown was trying to stem the flames there. I think Paul Green was looking at it like he thought it would be a thing to bring the young kid in and give him some experience in Origin, but I'm on Brown's side here. I think it's still too early. He's a hell of a talent, and he'll be an Origin player. It's no question. He's got the goods, but he's 18 and he's played like 5 games. So maybe let him get a bit more NRL experience first before you throw him to the Wolves there. But we may as well get straight into the round 12 review. Rich, so we'll go on Thursday night. We've got the Storm defeated the Broncos 40-12. Wasn't really much of a contest here with the Storm just being too strong, even though they still are without a lot of key players. They did welcome Brandon Smith back, but I think the star of the night was Nico Hines. We talked about him getting his new deal with the Sharks, but he was a monster for the Storm. He led them with running meters. I got the stats here. He got 214 running meters. He had 3 line breaks, 2 try assists, scored a try himself, and he was 6 from 7 at the kicking tee. I think we keep saying it, but Melbourne, you lose a superstar, and then all of a sudden the next kid coming in becomes a superstar. It's crazy there. What are your thoughts on the game and Nico Hines' performance?
Yeah, Hines was sensational. He was in everything, was involved in most of their scoring plays, like you say, solid off the tee. So from that point of view, I think the Storm would be pretty happy because Cam Munster wasn't exactly kicking very well before he was injured. Brandon Smith too was really good. Just his usual self, laying on tries, scoring a couple tries. Even Cooper Johns, I thought was quite good in the halves. Broncos didn't really have much of an answer.
No. And on that, we had the return of Anthony Milford. Tyson Gamble was on suspension, so it was Milford's time to shine and show Kevin Walters and all the NRL that he still had what it took. And unfortunately, it was a shocking night for him. I think the commentators were saying a lot that you could just see he had a lack of confidence. He's got talent, but he's just not backing himself at the moment. And his passes were just not on song, and it didn't matter. It didn't help matter, I'm sure, when Kevin Walters hooked him in the 68th minute. But yeah, it's a trying time for Milford right now. I think all the NRL clubs are probably taking 10 steps back from offering him deals, and he might be Super League bound if he wants to keep his career going, which is unfortunate because I think he's a fantastic player. I just don't think he's what the Broncos need.
Yeah, I think you're perfectly correct when you say he's down in confidence. You can just see it, mate. He's not the player he once was 4 or 5 years ago. And, you can see it in how the Broncos have been traveling. He might be struggling to pick up a good contract with his next one.
Yeah, definitely. So that's something we'll keep an eye on to see what happens with his whereabouts and where he's going to end up. I hope it's in the NRL for him. I think he's too young to go to Super League yet and got too much talent. But I want to give the Broncos a little bit of leeway for this performance. So they've been up and down, down more times than up, but they were playing the Storm, which is not an easy. We've seen what the Storm have done to some of the best teams in the NRL. So the fact that they tried at least, and they got some points on the board. I know that might sound a bit facetious, but they need to go back to the performances they had a couple of weeks ago if they want to try to make some inroads. They got no chance of making the 8, but it's more about building confidence up within the squad, getting them to that level where they can feel confident to hit next season head on, which, it's not the greatest outlook when you're only halfway through a year, but that's the reality of the situation for them right now.
Yeah, look, the Storm will do that to a lot of teams. I believe I think it was their 7th game this year where they've gone 40 points or more.
That's right. And their 9th win in a row as well.
Yeah, along with the Panthers, they're just a different beast from a lot of these other teams. So, yeah, a tough one for the Broncos.
Basically do the grand final now and just call it a day. But that takes us to the next game on Friday, which saw the Cowboys defeat the Warriors 29-28. Another stressful game. Second week in a row where the Warriors have had us at our wits' end. Unfortunately, it was a disappointing ending this time. I thought the Warriors started well, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they just disappeared, and the Cowboys went on a rampage. They got up to a 22-6 lead at halftime, which was really concerning sitting at home. But the Warriors, to their credit, they fought back. They scored 4 unanswered tries, including a length of the field try by Reese Walsh, which he just keeps adding to his highlight reel in the early stages of his career. But then they just let it slip again, let the Cowboys back into the contest, and then they kind of had the game in the bag when they had the Cowboys had a rough call right in front, and instead of just going for the quick field goal, the Warriors played some silly football and then shanked the field goal attempt, which gave the Cowboys the chance they needed. And a couple of plays from them, and then Valentine Holmes wasted no time, booted almost 40-meter field goal to win the game. What do you think? There's a lot to take out of this game.
Yeah, there's a lot to unwrap. This is a game where we would have targeted and thought this is a very winnable game, albeit the Cowboys have been going pretty well of late. Yeah, there was just we should have won this one, but there was a few things. Our edge defense wasn't the flashiest. We were making a few mistakes there. I think Katoa made a couple of pretty bad ones. The Jazz Tavanga sin binning didn't help and just compounded things. That sin bin, by the way, clear penalty. I think he's definitely hit him plenty late. It wasn't high. It looked pretty soft. I don't think I've ever seen a sin bin like that. That was a pretty soft sin bin for me. Yeah, it's the ref made the comment about a bit of whiplash. Again, first time I've ever heard that as a reason to sin bin somebody. But we also looked a bit exposed in some areas, like with Reese Walsh's defense. Maybe he was exposed a little bit in this game. I know his attack is always good, but the Cowboys ran through him a couple times for tries. So, disappointing. Yeah, disappointing.
Yeah, back to the Jazz thing. I don't think it was sin bin worthy, but it was the most boneheaded thing I've seen him do in a long time. And hopefully that's a wake-up call for him on the sin bin. Like, it's good to have. I like having him out there. He's a bit of an enforcer, but there was no need to do what he did in that situation. It didn't give the Warriors a leg up. Hurt them very badly. And on the defensive side of things, Walsh got shown up a few times, which was a bit of a concern, but I was quite concerned about Roger on the wing. He kept rushing in off the wing, something the Warriors have been prone to do, but I thought of a guy like Roger with his experience wouldn't do it, but he was rushing in like we've seen everyone else to do. It was just really frustrating. Because it just put a lot more pressure on Reese Walsh to kind of clean up, which of all people, Roger knows what it's like when he has to do the cleanup work because his wingers and centers have rushed in. So to see him doing it is just concerning. I don't know if that's a defensive ploy, because if he's even doing it, it means someone's obviously telling them to do it, surely. And then, I don't know.
Yeah, it might be just our defensive structure, because I think Montoya was even caught on the outside by Felt, and Montoya was doing the same thing. He was coming in the center, and I know they that teams sort of wingers will jam in if they feel like their centres have jammed in as well, that they tend to follow them in. So I don't know if it's just our defensive structure that's lacking a bit, but definitely something we need to look at. Yeah,
and don't want to just cry about the Warriors all of this. So Cowboys, I think they'll be happy with that win. Todd Payton finally gets a win over his former team. It's got them into the top 8, which I think is great for them. And if they can play with that same type of intensity, their campaign's in good shape for now. It's just keeping that level up. And yeah, for the Warriors, I've got concerns with Nathan Brown's interchange. I think he's leaving forwards on for too long or not giving them enough minutes. Katoa, I think around the 20-minute mark, you kind of saw that Katoa needed to come off. Ben Murdoch-Masilla's been probably the Warriors' best, or one of the best forwards the Warriors have in Adam Fanua-Blake's absence, minus Tohu Harris. But just leaving him on the pine for the whole first half, I think, was a big mistake. And you saw when he came out in the second half, the impact he had on the game. So I think he's just got to work on it a little bit. I think Bunty Afoa only got 15 minutes in the entire game as well. Could be a concern when Adam Fanua-Blake comes back on maybe other players not getting the minutes, or maybe Fanua-Blake doesn't get as many minutes as he needs to. So what are your thoughts on the whole interchange thing?
Agree completely. I think you're spot on. Looking at some Katoa's efforts, there was a couple of breaks where he didn't look like he had much energy left to sort of put his full effort into chasing back. I think the Jake Clifford try where he was chasing the grubber, Katoa was just sort of meandering around the ball and didn't look to have the energy to put in a big effort to cut it off. Yeah, and I'm like you. I think Murdoch-Masila needs more minutes. He makes a really good impact, and I'd be throwing him into the game 20, 25 minutes into the first half if it were me.
Yeah, 100%. So they got a bye this week, so they've got a lot of time to sit down and reevaluate how the first half of the season's gone for them and what they need to do to improve. Fanua-Blake should be back next round, which will be great for them. And yeah, it's not all doom and gloom. They haven't played that bad. They haven't played that good. They're kind of in the middle, and their ladder position kind of proves that fact. And they're still in the race. So they got some tough matchups, but they got some easily winnable matchups. So yeah, it's all about finding that consistency, so we don't have to keep complaining about these lapses that we see every week. If they can get rid of the lapses, they know how to score points. We saw that here where they went from 22-6 down to leading. They just got, there's a few things, no lapses, better interchange, and better starts, and I think we'll see a competitive side.
I think so, mate. And I think on that Phil Gould interview you were talking about a little earlier, he kind of made comment too that, we're sort of just part of that group of teams that are sandwiched in below the top sort of 3 or 4, and will be in a lot of games, and a lot of close games this year. So it'll depend on how we hold our nerve and finish those. Yeah,
which makes it entertaining watching as a fan of league, but very stressful as a Warriors fan. But yeah, let's get into the next game on Friday. We had the Tigers defeating the Dragons 34-18. So after that tight match with the Warriors Cowboys, we're back to one-sided affairs with the Tigers dominating the Dragons here. The margin doesn't look that bad, but the Dragons kind of got a few late tries. I think they got 2 tries in like the last 10 minutes to kind of make the score look a bit better. But it was just the Tigers, as I've been saying all year. They take teams to the limit, and on their day they can beat teams, and the Dragons just continue to slide. They're not going to get to my wooden spoon spot like I predicted, but I think they're definitely on a one-way trip out of the 8.
Yeah, I think the Tigers did to the Dragons what they should have done to the Dragons. given some of the personnel the Dragons have been missing, and now they've sort of been sliding, like you say. Dane Laurie was really good, really dangerous, and he continues to be one that looks really good. Him and Tommy Talau were amongst the tries. I think even James Roberts, he's had a bit of a quiet season, but he picked up a couple of tries. So, I think they just did what they needed to do there and put them away.
Yeah, and the Dragons, I think they're just going to end up where they belong on the ladder. I think they had that nice little run of form at the start, which let them leapfrog a few people. But they're slowly settling back to where they kind of are in this competition, which isn't great for them, but it's good for teams below them on the ladder that should hopefully squeeze into the 8. Time is going to tell with that. But I've looked at the Dragons' run and it isn't that pretty. So there could be some rough times ahead. That brings us to the first game on Saturday, and it was a bit of a surprise, but the Panthers beat the Bulldogs 30-4. I thought it was a bit of a bizarre match because I was expecting, would we get triple figures? Would it be a cricket score? How badly were the Panthers going to hurt the Bulldogs here? But I don't think it was that the Panthers played bad. I think they wanted to keep a few tricks up their sleeve. It looked like they were just doing a training run. They never looked troubled. They were just doing what they needed to do. And, it was a glorified training run. It looked like they were trying some things. It was very slow. It was 10-0 at halftime, which I'm sure would have made a lot of Bulldogs fans' day. They were still in the match. And then, that second half, the Panthers were like, okay, now we've had our fun. Let's put something on. And they scored 4 tries quickly to blow the game up. But, I think it's still scary. It shows you'd think a Panthers team as good as they are with as many young players, they might take this game lightly or be a bit too cocky and start doing silly things that you would see some young, excited players do. But they were just slow and methodical, did what they were told to do, and punished the Bulldogs in a slightly different way than I thought they would.
Yeah, I think some credit needs to go to the Bulldogs for the first half. They were hanging tough and keeping it really tight. I think then Dylan Watene-Zelezniak made a terrible blunder, with a bad offload that gifted the Panthers a try, and then it all sort of rolled on from there.
Yeah.
And then the Panthers, we've said it so many times this year, but they've just got too many threats. I thought Stephen Crichton was really immense. He was immense. He put his hand up and sort of told the New South Wales selectors, don't forget about me. I think he got a try assist, a try himself, a really nice try, and he had 265 running meters, so he had a big one. Also, Burton and Charlie Staines got a couple of tries, so all their regular threats were doing their thing.
Yeah, definitely. And, the Bulldogs, I just think that it goes down to basics. They lack attack and they can't defend, as cruel as that can be. I've been talking a lot about how good they're going to be next year with the players, but I think a thing that I've overlooked, and I think I'm assuming they're looking into it, but I think they need to get some forwards in. They've bolstered their backs, but it's their middle that's kind of lacking at the moment. They've got Jack Hetherington, who was the player I mentioned about the Simbins. I think he was very lucky. He's kind of a Simbin merchant at the best of times, but he got put on report twice, and I think any other day with how these new rules are, both of those calls probably would have marched him to the bin with how the rules are now. So I think he was very lucky there. But they're missing. They lost Aidan Tolman. They let him go. They've got Luke Thompson, who is the standout for their pack, but they needed at least 1 or 2 other guys in there to help them out, because you could have the best back line in the world, but if your forward aren't doing the work, they're not going to be able to shine.
Yeah, and I wonder if they're still pursuing Jazz Tavanga because he would help. But you're absolutely right, mate. They have done a lot of work on their backs, but they do look thin in the forwards.
Yeah, 100%. Tough times still ahead for the Bulldogs. I think they're kind of solidifying themselves as the wooden spoon to be. unfortunately for them. But yeah, the Panthers, I just don't know when their first loss is going to be. I don't know. I know we might have some different opinions, but I think they're a very talented side, and it might have to wait until they play the Storm or the Warriors. Warriors will upset them, I'm sure.
100%.
But we'll go to the next game on Saturday. We had the Rabbitohs defeating the Eels 38-20. Rabbitohs are kind of becoming that team I can't predict anymore. They've been really poor, but I thought they looked really good in this game. And the Eels, I think, have been showing up again. I think the Eels, a lot of people are calling them flat track bullies now, where if they get themselves into a good position, they'll make you pay. But if you show a bit of resistance, they fall apart, which we saw here. The Rabbitohs just put on a show. Alex Johnston and Dane Gagai both got hat tricks. And yeah, it was a better performance from the Rabbitohs. I know we have the stat that a team that has had 50 on them don't win premierships. They'll be wanting to prove that wrong. I still think they're a mile behind the Storm and Panthers, but I think it's fair to say they're probably the third best team in the comp at the moment. You could argue maybe Manly are trying to push them in that category, but I think it's they got a lot of talent. If they hold on to the ball, they cause trouble, which is what we saw here.
I think we mentioned it a bit last week, but I think we both tipped. You tipped the Rabbitohs, didn't you? I tipped the Rabbitohs this week.
Yeah.
So it was another week with Latrell back, and then now with Cam Murray back. We were kind of saying Cam Murray makes a really big difference to the Rabbitohs. Just with those key guys coming back, they looked like they were picking up some polish again and looking slick. For the Eels, the Eels' defense was a bit of a horror show on that side where Johnston was scoring, and I think Eels fans weren't too happy with Blake Ferguson and Wonga Blake. So I know they've swung the axe with Blake Ferguson. He's paying the price for that. But their defense down that side was really poor, and the Rabbitohs ended up cutting them to ribbons.
Yeah, it shows the difference a week makes. Before that game, Blake Ferguson was getting talked up as a potential winger for New South Wales, and now he's not making first grade. It was shocking. They had poor discipline as well. They had 2 sin bins, and they had a lot of silly penalties against them. And that defense, they need to work on it. For a top 4 side like they're meant to be, they can't just leak tries like they are. A lot of work to do for them. They haven't got the bye this week, so they can't prepare like the Warriors can. But they need to do something, and they need to do it fast because, as we'll see coming up shortly with the ladder, there's not that many points between a lot of these sides, and a couple of poor rounds can see you completely drop out of contention. So it's great for a competition standpoint that so many teams are close, but you can't let games like this slip. That brings us to the last game on Saturday, another blowout. The Roosters defeating the Raiders 44-16. The Raiders continued the trend that we've seen the last couple of weeks where they come out on a flyer. They were leading 16-0 at one point, and at half or in the first half, and then they just disappeared at halftime like we've seen like the last month. Joseph Sawali, who I was a bit critical of last week, he scored his first try. Bit of a fluke try if you ask me. He put himself in the right position, so I give him credit for that, but just the bounce of the ball. But I thought he played well. I think he is definitely a talent. I just want we talked about it a bit last week, and it probably includes us in this category, but I just want to see people settle down with these young kids. The NRL is still doing highlight reels of everything he does in games, which I still think is a bit cringeworthy. That we haven't seen it for Reese Walsh yet, and I think you get a lot more exciting stuff out of that. But these young kids, they're kind of being just put out there early, and I think he'll be okay in the Roosters. The Roosters have had more than their share of experience with superstars and how to keep them grounded. I think the Warriors have been doing really well with Reese Walsh, keeping their heads level. You just don't want to see these kids get blown out of proportion, and then if they have one bad game, the whole world dumps on them, and it turns them. Look at Anthony Milford, for an example. Anthony Milford was meant to be the next big thing. Had a couple of poor years with Brisbane, and now he's the little kid with leprosy in the corner that no one wants to touch. We don't want to see that with these superstar talent, because it's these young guys with their talent that bring new eyes to the NRL, that get more people interested. So you want to keep them nice and healthy and keep them performing. But yeah, before doing a Walsh here, just talking about one kid all night. Joseph Manu, I think, played well for the Roosters as well. He got pulled into 5'8" with Sam Walker getting dropped. And I think he played really well. He just seems to be a talent that gives you 100% regardless of where you put him on the field. And we talked a few weeks ago that there were rumours the Warriors were looking at Manu potentially, and I'm hoping they're still doing that, because I'd love to see him in a Warriors jersey with the way he's playing at the moment.
Oh, I would love to see him in a Warriors jersey. He had a great game. You kind of covered it well, mate. Sawali looked a lot better this week, got a try, had a nice try assist. Copy and paste performance for the Raiders, They know how to start well and then just completely bomb a game. It's just typical Raiders performance this year. They suffered a funny old sin bin as well, with Ryan James going off for a use of the leg on Jared Warrior-Hargreaves. What did you make of that one? Because it looked like he sort of was pulled down on top of Hargreaves by Hargreaves himself.
Yeah. You don't put me in this situation where I have to sit there and defend a forward, because I'm always going to do it.
I like to paint you as this thug, Brad.
I think there was nothing in it. But I think even if that sin bin hadn't happened, we wouldn't have seen the result change.
No.
I think I'm putting a line through the Raiders. I think they're done. I've just got no faith that they can make the 8, which will naturally mean they're going to start turning their form around and prove me wrong, like everyone else is at the moment. But I don't know what's happened at that club. Something has happened internally. It has to be. This is basically the nucleus of this team, is the team that took them to a grand final. I know they're missing Chance at fullback, which is a big loss. But yeah, something's happened, and I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to fix it. If I had the answer for it, I'm sure I could give up working where I work and go work for the Raiders and fix their problems, but I don't know. You got any ideas what's going wrong?
I don't think it's just one thing. It seems like a culture thing at the club this year. So yeah, they've had injuries, and they've had homesick people. So now, we talked about it last week, Georgie Williams has been released. So I don't think they're a happy dressing room right now, but they're leaving a spot in the top 8 for us. So long may it continue.
Yeah, it's horrible to say, but it's very true. May as well go to the first game on Sunday. It was an upset in my eyes, but the Sharks defeated the Titans 38-10. Sharks have been all over the place. We kind of wrote them off a few weeks ago, or I did. Don't want to put you into that same category, but getting rid of their coach and players basically being told they can leave. It was almost very similar to what we're seeing at the Raiders, but somehow every couple of weeks the Sharks pull one out of the hat, and I think they just got the ball rolling and never looked back. I thought their forwards delivered well. I thought Sean Johnson played really well in his 200th match.
Yep.
And he partnered well with Matt Moylan, which is probably a downside to the news of Nico Hines going and one of them potentially going. I think when you get those two together, they seem to really work well. And I think, if Johnson can stay healthy, who knows what the season will bring for Cronulla. They could be in the 8. They might fall out of the 8. It's so hard to tell with the inconsistency. And on the Titans, I'm going to be a bit harsh. They're going from contenders to pretenders for me. They were talked up heavily before the season started, from me as well. But they just don't appear to be any better than they were last year. And I think, simply put, they can't rely on David Fifita to do everything and get them out of trouble.
We spoke a bit about it last week, and we can say it again this week. Their defense. It's all good having $1 million second rower that can score your hat tricks, but the kind of defensive efforts they're serving up lately, not going to win you a lot of games.
No.
I thought they were stiffed a couple times with the refereeing, and I think the games on Sunday had some terrible refereeing decisions. The Jamal Fogarty sin binning that's one of the worst I've seen in a while. I mean, what did you make of it? Because for me, he's just running onside, and Wade Graham throws the ball, a forward pass, into him on purpose. And I thought a couple of years ago, the NRL were going to crack down on that.
Yeah. No, he deserved it 100%. Halfbacks should be punished for everything they do. He got in the way of a forward, so yeah, simping. Yeah, I think it was where they were trying to crack down on it, like you said, for players milking that. We saw last year, Wade Egan did it for the Warriors and got penalised for it. But yeah, this one, instead of getting penalised, the other player gets sin-binned. It was very harsh. But yeah, I think, I can't speak for them, but I think the Titans are just bought into their own hype. Everyone talked them up. Everyone was talking them up. And I think they got a lot of young guys, and unlike what we're seeing with the Panthers, where they seem to be able to keep their heads level, I think the Titans are just bought in 100% and aren't backing up. And again, it's another team that's in that mix, which if they keep doing this, it's going to help teams like the Warriors, teams like the Cowboys get into the 8. And there is a big shot that the Titans don't make the playoffs this year, which will be a huge failure for them as a club after all the investments they've made.
Well, yeah, maybe they have bought into their hype, but they look like a team with a couple of really good pieces of the puzzle, but they don't look a complete team when you look at other teams like the Rabbitohs, Panthers, Storm, etc. So, yeah, they still look to me like they're missing and lacking in a few areas to make them a really competitive top 8, top 6, top 4 team.
Yeah, they're missing a hooker. Simply put, they're missing a hooker. Who they can get in for that, I'm not sure. But yeah, they need. Yeah, I think if they can fill in those pieces of the puzzle, they should get better. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. So they need to fix themselves in other ways. Which brings us to the last game of the round, and was the Knights defeating the Sea Eagles 18-10. Another surprising match. This was another game where I expected, like the Panthers, I expected Manly to run a cricket score up here against the Knights. I think the Manly started well. They had a great long distance try by Jason Saab, who I still think I haven't seen him run at top pace yet. He just always looks like he's just jogging away. No one can catch him, but he just won't sprint yet. Manly were a bit hard done by on the penalties, and so gave the Knights the chance they needed to get into the match. And then once they got in, they took their opportunity with both hands and ran away. Can't really say run away. There was only 18 points scored by the winning side. But yeah, I think in the second half, you saw both teams really struggling on attack. I think the Knights, to their credit, they did a great job in containing Tommy Turbo. And if Tommy Turbo isn't there or isn't getting to play well, Manly don't play well, which I think is what we saw here. Before I let you talk, I just want to say I felt really sorry for Ben Travojevic. He was getting to make his debut. Des Hasler waited until like the last moments to bring him on. He made a couple of tackles, got concussed, and got taken off. He had like a minute for his debut. So heartbreaking for him to be out there playing with his brothers and only get a minute. But it's early days in his career. I'm sure he's going to come back, and they're going to be a trio of brothers causing a lot of havoc for years to come.
Absolutely. And the Knights were one of the first teams since Tommy Trebojevic has come back to keep him quiet. And as we know, when he's quiet or not playing, it reduces Manly's threat quite a bit. Manly were on the wrong end of the penalty count. I think it was 9-1 or something like that.
9-1, yeah, that's right.
It was pretty heavy-handed, but I think also their discipline wasn't too great. I mean, they had a couple people sin-bin. Sean Kepi was sin-bin for a shoulder to the head. Who else was it? Marty Tapau, I think, was sin-binned.
Marty Tapau, yeah.
So I think in some instances they were their own worst enemies. But the Knights showed a lot of grit to pull that one out of the fire because, they're still missing troops. I think Saifidi led the way and their forwards did a good job. And they did a good job defensively. So, hats off to them pulling off that upset. I think most people, especially when Manly went out 10-0, I think most people were thinking it was going to be a big score to the Sea Eagles. So the Knights did well.
100%. So, that was round 12. So, as we go to bring up the ladder, we may as well go over the picks. We picked exactly the same. So, we got 5 out of 8. We got the Warriors game wrong. We got the Titans game wrong. And we got the Sea Eagles game wrong. Not a great week for us, which means you're still in the lead, having 68 out of 96, and I'm one behind on 67. And there we go. We got the ladder. So, Penrith still undefeated, still at the top. Melbourne still second. Parramatta and Souths are sitting there in third and fourth. I think the Manly will, depending on how Tommy Turbo goes in Origin, I think Manly are going to sneak up there before the season's done. You got Roosters, Manly 5th and 6th. Cowboys after the win have gone up to 7th. Dragons are now 8th. Potentially going to fall out of there very soon. Warriors are sitting at 9th still, followed by the Titans. Where would you do your cutoff now?
Well, I don't see Newcastle, Cronulla, West being any sort of threat, to be honest. So thinking teams like obviously the Warriors and Titans are still a show, depending on how their form goes in the back end of the season. But I think St. George will slide a bit, as we both sort of were on the same page there. But I think we're still looking around 10 or 11 cutoff point. Yeah,
I think so too. I think looking at that top 8, teams that I could see drop out are basically the Cowboys and the Dragons.
Yeah.
I think Manly, unless if Tommy Turbo gets injured, then I'll add them to falling out. Roosters, I thought Roosters were going to drop out, but they keep showing that they can play with all their second string guys. So I think they're safe. So I think 7 and 8 have the potential to drop out, with probably 9 or 10 coming in, or a combination. And then we've got Cronulla at 12th, the Tigers at 13, Raiders gone down to 14. Being very thankful that the Broncos and Bulldogs are in the competition. Staying at 15 and 16. And I think you'll probably see those 3 teams stay at the bottom for the rest of the year, if I'm going to be brutally honest.
It looks like that could happen, mate.
Yeah. So, that's the ladder. Do we have any questions from the audience, Paul?
We've got a kind of question / statement or opinion from Nigel Phillips. He says he believes once we finally play at home and the boys can see firsthand what a huge supporter base we have, and with another year under their belt and seeing our facilities and culture of home, surely we can be what all us supporters know they have within them. I, for one, am feeling really good about our club's future. So I guess, do you think we'll see an upturn from the Warriors next year when they're at home? are they a couple of points lower than they should be because of being stuck in Australia?
I'll let you go first, Richie. I've been talking all night.
Yeah, all right. So, in my mind, all of us being based over there in the Sunshine Coast, it has its upsides. Like, it reduces our travel, and obviously we're a close-knit group and quite together. But we are lacking that home crowd, real tribal sort of teams not wanting to come to Mount Smart to play us. And I think Gus Gould touched on it a little bit in that interview. It has its tough points for us being over there and not having our identity or home ground. So I'm hoping that once we're back here, it affects us positively and we can do a bit better.
Yeah, I am a lot more confident in their future now than I was when they announced that Roger was leaving. When Roger, I joined Paul when that news was announced, and I kept my emotions quite well. I cried for hours afterwards. But I was very concerned. I was like, we don't really have a player to take his place yet, and I didn't see the ability to sign a Ryan Pappenhausen or a top tier guy. My little crush Reese Walsh came in, and he's kind of brought my confidence up. We talked last week about Otakolo, the young hooker that we re-signed. He's meant to be like the next big thing as well. There's a lot of young guys that are going to get opportunities next year, and fingers crossed they get to play in New Zealand, and fingers crossed they don't get all the injuries they've had this year. I think if this year, if you didn't have all those injuries and you did have some more home crowd support, no disrespect to the guys in Oz, there's a lot of Warriors fans that are making the effort to go to the games all across Australia. But when you've got maybe 2,000 or 3,000 Warriors fans as opposed to getting 30,000 at Mount Smart, it's a big difference. And Warriors players and opposition alike have said that they'll go to Mount Smart and there'll be 10,000 in Mount Smart, but it sounds like there's 40. So it's an intimidating place to go to as an opposition. And let's be honest, no one likes going to Auckland, New Zealand is included. So if we could get those Australians to not want to come here again, it would be great. It's just at the moment, I'll say it facetiously, but the Warriors don't want to come to Auckland at the moment either. So, I can't wait till they come back. The fact that they're probably not coming back in a couple of weeks like we all thought they were is heartbreaking for me. But yeah, I'm super confident for next year. I still think super confident that they'll do well, but I still think they're still a long way behind the guys like Melbourne and Panthers, obviously. But if they can get themselves to be like a top 5, top 6 team consistently, that's when you start reaping the benefits. So yeah, super confident.
Can I just say, Brad, you're a Warriors fan. You're super confident at the start of every season.
That is true. That is true. It's we need a little asterisk next to it.
And Nigel just made the point that whilst it has been easier for the Warriors travelling over in Australia, it's also been easier for their opponents. And their opponents, when they come over here, obviously will have to travel more to come to New Zealand. And so that was Nigel commenting on Brad's Ramblings Facebook page, where you can get all of Brad's stuff. Obviously, you can also watch and provide comments through the New Zealand Sport Radio Facebook page, New Zealand Sport Radio YouTube account, and also on Twitter as well. And don't forget, you can also listen to us as a podcast if you want to listen to us on the go. But that's it for questions for this week in the live chat, boys.
Cool. Thanks, Nigel, and thanks, Paul. You said the question first last week, so I'm going to give you my one this week first. Since we're basically at the midway point of the season now, which team has been your biggest surprise, either by playing better than expected or falling apart?
Easy, the Raiders.
Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to be the correct answer.
They've been a train wreck, and you and I think, would have both picked them at least top 8, top 6 at the very minimum. And they'll do well to avoid bottom 4.
Yeah, I had top 4 in my head before the season started. I thought it would be Panthers, Storm, Rabbitohs, Raiders in the top 4. And they're just falling apart. It's a mess. And I'm happy it's them and not me, but it's horrible for their fans.
From a positive point of view, I think Cowboys and Manly have surprised me in a good way, because I think the start of the season, we were sort of thinking those two teams could possibly be where the Raiders are right now on the table.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think once the Cowboys have bought into Todd Payton, they're definitely showing a lot of improvement. And Manly were just counting down until Tommy Turbo was back, and then they would be back to where they were. But your question for me.
Sure. I'm going Origin themed this time, buddy.
Of course you are.
It's getting that time of year. So with the officiating the way it's been recently, do you think that's how Origin's going to be officiated, or do you think the refs will give a bit of leeway and turn some blind eyes, or do you think the officiating will negatively affect the series?
The NRL have come out and said they're going to officiate it the same as they're doing in the NRL, but they say that every year and they never do. Yeah. So I think there'll be leeway. I don't think you're going to see a lot of players going in like with shoulders to the head or big tackles, but I think if a wayward arm accidentally grazes someone's face and gives them a little scratch, they're not going to be marched to the bin. Putting my facetious hat on again, if a couple of Storm players get in trouble and possibly miss a couple of weeks, it will do good for the Warriors. But I think there is going to be a bit more leeway than we've seen. But I guess we're going to find out almost this time next week on how serious they're going to crack down.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So let's get into round 13's preview. It's a bit shorter than normal due to the bye week. So we may as well do our picks at the same time. Thursday night, we've got the Dragons versus the Broncos. I've gone with the Dragons here. I know I've been talking about how bad they're going to slip, but I just don't know if the Broncos can do it, especially with the likes of Payne Haas and Xavier Coates not being there. So I'm going with Dragons.
I'm opposing you this time, mate. I've gone Broncos. I think the Dragons were poor, and they have been poor pretty recently. So I think the Broncos get Tyson Gamble back this week as well, so they can cast Milford. Yeah. They can cast Milford aside again. I've gone Broncos.
You see, your time at the top's gone to your head. Just making all these crazy picks. Then we've got the game on Friday. We got the Tigers versus Panthers. I've gone with the Panthers. I know they're missing a lot of players in Origin, but like we said before the show started, the last time the Panthers were hit with a lot of Origin players out, they played the Warriors and towed them up. So I think the Tigers, they show a lot of spirit, but I still think the Panthers have what it takes.
I've gone bold here, and I've gone Tigers. Looking at... I'm either going to be laughing or crying after that game. So, the Panthers are just missing, I think rightfully so. I don't think they were missing as many people last year. I think this year, rightfully so, they've got 5 people involved. I believe it's 5. And their backline's been rejigged almost completely. So they got a whole new halves pairing, Tyron May and Burton. They've still got quality, but I think maybe it just might disrupt their team a bit. So I've gone Tigers for a bold call.
They've still got Dylan Edwards, still got Crichton, still got Momorowski. The Staines are still there. They got all the stars. No one cares about Nathan Cleary's rubbish. He's not going to help them out.
They have to lose one day.
They do. Out of those 2 games that we've picked different, I hope the Dragons-Broncos goes in your favor because it would help the Warriors better if the Dragons lose. But Saturday, we've got the Storm versus Titans. I've gone with the Storm. They've already shown that they can play without their top-tier talent. So it's just a rinse and repeat, and the Titans have to play without David Fafita, which I think is going to hurt them.
And Brimson.
And Brimson, yes.
Yeah, two of their best players. Take those two out, they're going to really struggle. And take players out of the Storm, and they seemingly don't struggle. So Storm for me as well.
Yep, so our first game we've agreed on. And then the last game of the round, we've got Knights versus Eels. I've gone with the Eels. I know I've been a bit critical of them, but I think they still have the talent. They haven't been hit that hard about Origin, and getting Reed Money back, I think is going to help them out a lot. And yeah, the Knights I think will struggle here.
So I think it's only Junior Paulo that they're missing for Origin then, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I went Eels as well. They haven't been hit that hard by Origin. You look at the squad and still all the main players are there. Gutherson, Mitch Moses, all those guys. So, yeah, I think Eels should get that one done and bounce back finally.
Yeah. So that's what round 13 is going to be, a bit shorter than what we're used to. So we've got two games different. We've got the Dragons-Broncos game and the Panthers-Tigers game. So you're either going to run away with a huge lead, or I might get my first chance at the top this year. We'll know by the end of Friday night. So I've got my fingers crossed. So we may as well get into some Super League news before we wrap up the show. There wasn't a lot of breaking news during the week, so I've basically just got our round results, including an unfortunate Wigan game in there. But we saw Warrington put a cricket score on Salford, 62-18. Warrington still playing well without Greg Inglis. Next up, we had another one-sided affair with Leeds defeating Castleford 60-6. Then we had St Helens defeating Hull FC 34-16. Then Catalans defeated Wigan 48-0, which was a huge surprise for me. Then Wakefield, defeated Huddersfield 38-12. And then to keep this train wreck of every game being a blowout, Hull KR defeated Lee 40-16. So every game a blowout. Crazy.
People were complaining about the NRL having blowouts.
Yeah, at least the NRL have tried to get one or two close games in there for you. But I thought it was interesting. There was a few like Wigan and Catalans. Catalans are playing really well. Wigan have two. It's a bit like when we saw the Panthers wipe the floor with the Rabbitohs. It's that same type of situation. Crazy to see, which brings us to round 9 for them. It's a bit of a different round. Normally it starts tomorrow or the day after if we go with our time difference. But this week it's a game on Sunday, then it waits till Thursday, and then all the rest of the games are on Friday. So first up on Sunday is Wakefield versus Lee. Then on the Thursday, we've got Castleford versus Hull FC. And then Friday, we've got Huddersfield versus Wigan, Hull KR versus Salford, Leeds versus St Helens. And then we end the round with Warrington versus Wakefield. I was trying to dive a bit deeper to find out why they changed all the way the schedule is. I couldn't find a reason. Unfortunately, Simon's not with us tonight. Simon knows all the Super League data. So I was hoping he'd have the answer for us, but hopefully he can fill us in on that next week. But is there anything else you want to cover before we sign off, Richie?
No, I think that's it, mate. Look forward to next week. I hope you wear some maroon and I can wear some sky blue, and we'll have some banter.
Yeah, and for next week's show as well, we'll do our State of Origin prediction instead of doing it this week, because we'll be just going into before kickoff basically, so we'll know the exact 17 everything, and we'll do our little side bets on that. So on we'll have a separate tipping tally compared to the rest of the NRL with that. But yeah, we'll make it interesting with some picks and see how we go. I feel like we're going to pick who we support.
Yep.
But we'll see how that goes. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in and joining us on the Standoff with Brad and Richie for your weekly update on rugby league. Tune into our show next week at 8 p.m. here on Facebook or at your convenience on iHeartRadio. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. And Thank you again for joining me, Richie, and good night, everyone.